You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Today we will be discussing Robert Fludd. He's definitely one of my favorite alchemists and a very influential one as well. He has influenced alchemy and science and is known for his elaborate, detailed engravings that you will be able to see on the video presentation if you decide to watch instead of listening on audio. One of the reasons I also wanted to talk about this man is because he does discuss the brain, eyes, and blood. And I'm sure you all know I am a fan of that. And in this episode, you will be getting just myself. So this should be interesting. And now we are going to get right into it. Who was Robert Fludd? Robert Fludd was an English Paracelsian physician who lived from January 17th, 1574 to September 8th, 1637, that delved into both science and the occult. His main interests were astrology, mathematics, cosmology, Kabbalah, and Rosicrucianism. He was born at Millgate House in Bearsted, Kent. He was the son of Sir Thomas Fludd, a prominent governmental official who served as Queen Elizabeth I's treasurer for war in Europe and member of Parliament. His mother, Elizabeth Andrews Fludd, played a huge role in his upbringing. He entered St. John's College, Oxford, as a commoner in 1591, and then got a BA in 1597 and an MA in 1598. It's worth mentioning that St. John's College in Oxford was among the few in England that offered a fellowship in medicine. During his tenure at the college, the medical fellow in residence was Matthew Gwynne, known for his tract indicating familiarity with both Galenic and Paracelsian medical practices. It's possible that Fludd may have come across Gwynne or his writings during his time in Oxford and possibly influencing his medical philosophy and approach. Between 1598 and 1604, Fludd focused on the study of medicine, chemistry, and Hermeticism as he pursued his education across the European mainland after his graduation. There isn't too much known about his travels, but he does recall spending a winter in the Pyrenees studying theurgy and the practice of rituals alongside the Jesuits. He also hints at traveling through Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. Upon returning to England in 1604, Robert Fludd enrolled at Christ Church in Oxford. His purpose was to pursue a degree in medicine, a path that demanded an understanding of the required medical literature, which included the works of Galen and Hippocrates. Fludd presented and defended 3 theses based on these texts before making his supplication on May 14, 1605. This led to his successful graduation with both MB and MD degrees on May 16, 1605. After graduating from Christ Church, Fludd moved to London, where he settled in Fenchurch Street. He made repeated attempts to get into the College of Physicians, but had difficulties with the examiners due to his open dislike for traditional medical authorities and his adoption of Paracelsus views. Also, his attitude towards ancient authorities, such as Galen, also contributed to being denied. Despite at least 6 failed attempts, Fludd finally succeeded in gaining admission in September 1609. Despite all the failed attempts, he did well in his career, holding the esteemed position of censor of the college on 4 occasions, in 1618, 1627, 1633, and 1634. In 1614, he took part in the college's inspection of the London apothecaries and played a major role in crafting this is a hard one, Pharmacopoeia Londinensis, something like that, in 1618, which was the first standard list of medicines and their ingredients in England. Kind of impressive. Would have been impressive if I knew how to say that correctly. Both his career and his standing in the college took a turn for the better. He was on good terms with Sir William Paddy, and his support for the theory of the circulation of the blood proposed by the college's William Harvey. A little quick thing on William Harvey. William Harvey was an English physician who made influential contributions in anatomy and physiology. He was the first known physician to describe completely and in detail the systemic circulation and properties of blood being pumped to the brain and the rest of the body by the heart, though earlier writers such as Rialdo Colombo, Michael Servetus, and Jacques de Boy had provided precursors of the theory. He was appointed as physician extraordinary to King James I on the 3rd of February, 1618. And now Sir William Paddy. Now, if you have listened to older shows in the past, we have also mentioned William Paddy. In the Michael Myers series, we mentioned William. Michael's first well-known book, Arcanissima, was originally dedicated to the head of the Royal College of Physicians at that time, and it was William Paddy. Just wanted to add that. Now back to Robert. While he followed Paracelsus in his medical views rather than the ancient authorities, he was also a believer that real wisdom was to be found in the writings of natural magicians. His view of these mystical ideas was inclined towards the great mathematicians, and he believed, like Pythagoras and his followers, that numbers contain access to great hidden secrets. Certainly in religion, he argued, could be discovered only through serious study of numbers and ratios. This perspective later brought Fludd into conflict with Johannes Kepler, highlighting the profound impact of his unconventional beliefs. And now we will spend some time discussing Robert Fludd's medical practices and beliefs. Robert Fludd blended traditional practices with innovative ideas rooted in mysticism and alchemy, and he was also a strong advocate of Paracelsian principles and ideas. This was a departure from the dominant Galenic medical theories of his time. He believed in the transformative power of alchemy, not just for turning base metals into gold, but also for healing the human body. Fludd saw the body as a microcosm of the universe, and he sought to align its elements with the microcosmic order for health and well-being. Fludd's medical philosophy integrated physical, spiritual, and cosmic elements. He believed that healing required addressing not just the body, but also the soul and its connection to the divine. His medical practice relied on prayer and the Hebrew name of Jesus, which he believed held magical power. He associated Jesus with the angel Metatron, the world soul, equating Metatron with the Hermetic anima mundi, or anthropos. Fludd argued that the first manifestation of the Godhead in Jewish Kabbalah, Hakma, or Chokmah, wisdom, is the same as the second person of the Christian Trinity, Jesus Christ, the verbum, or the word, from the Gospel of John. This word connects to the Hebrew letter Aleph. Fludd's concepts of divine creative and healing forces were illustrated through intersecting cones or pyramids. The pyramides formalis represent divine light from the Imperium, while the pyramides materialis points up from the earth. He termed these diagrams pyramides lucis, claiming innovation despite their roots in ancient theory. Within the cone's intersection, Fludd positioned the sun to balance spirit and matter, male and female, sulfur and mercury. Fludd's medical theories emphasized the importance of aerial nitrate, or quintessence for health. This celestial light originating from the sun was inhaled and transformed into vital spirit by the heart. In his work, Tractatus de Tritico, Fludd described distilling aryl nitrate from wheat using the sun's heat and light, claiming it was a universal panacea. His account linked the healing properties of bread to transubstantiation, suggesting that this panacea resembled the body and blood of Christ. He describes the production of this chemical in the Tractatus de Tritico, that is, Tractate on Wheat. He describes the production of this chemical in the first part of a longer work, the Adonami Amphitheater. The elixir, an alchemical equivalent of human blood, is derived from wheat's red oil and symbolizes Christ's body and blood. The sun is vital in Fludd's process, channeling celestial virtues into the distilled wheat spirit, which mirrors the properties of the sun and gold. Initially, a white liquid forms during distillation, turning red in sunlight due to fiery nitrate, creating a universal panacea. Fludd's ideas may have been influenced by Bohm, who suggests Christ is present in the Eucharist as the sun is in vegetation. The communion miracle is an alchemical transformation by nature's spiritual forces, with wine likened to the tincture. Fludd asserts the sun serves as Christ's altar, embodying the anima mundi as the angel Metatron. Robert Fludd was also a man who prescribed to the holistic approach as a means of treatment as well. Much of Fludd's writing and his pathology of disease centered around the sympathies found in nature between man, the terrestrial earth, and the divine. While Paracelsian in nature, Fludd's own theory on the origin of all things posited that, instead of the tria prima, all species and things stem from first dark chaos, then divine light, which acted upon the chaos, which finally brought forth the waters. The last element was also called the Spirit of the Lord, and it made up the passive matter of all other substances, including all secondary elements and all four qualities of the ancients. The Fluddian tripartite theory concluded that Paracelsus's own conception of the three primary principles, sulfur, salt, and mercury, eventually derived from chaos and light interacting to create variations of the waters or spirit. The Trinitarian division holds importance as it serves as a reflection of a mystical framework for understanding biology. Robert Fludd heavily drew from Scripture, where the number 3 symbolized the principum for Marian, or the original form, as well as the Holy Trinity. This association made the number 3 a representation of the perfect body, mirroring the concept of the Trinity. Thus, this framework allowed for the connection of man and earth with the infinity of God, fostering a universal bond of sympathy and composition among all things. As a Hermetist, Robert Fludd had a fascination with the elements. His examination of the first chapter of Genesis led him to identify darkness, light, and water as the sole true elements, relegating the traditional 4 elements of Aristotle and the 3 principles of Paracelsus to a secondary status. He drew parallels between heat and cold with light and darkness, using a graduated thermoscope to demonstrate their effects and seemingly provide visual confirmation on the doctrine of expansion and contraction. Now, when it comes to spiritual and mystical views and beliefs, there are a lot of places Fludd drew inspiration from. Robert Fludd was heavily influenced by a variety of intellectual and spiritual traditions. The most significant influence on his work is generally considered to be Paracelsus. Paracelsus emphasizes on the unity of the spiritual and material worlds, as well as his blend of alchemy, astrology, and mysticism resonated strongly with Fludd. This is evident in Fludd's major work, such as Utriusque Cosmi Historia, the history of 2 worlds, where he explores the relationship between the divine, the cosmos, and humanity. Ideas echo Paracelsian thought. Other people known to influence Fludd are Cornelius Agrippa, a German occultist and author of De Occulta Philosophia, the 3 books of the occult. Agrippa's work shares similarities with Fludd's, particularly in the esoteric views, and some scholars view Fludd as a successor to Agrippa's tradition. Another influence, Marsilio Ficino, an Italian philosopher who revived Platonism and translated the Hermetic corpus and helped shape Renaissance mysticism and Neoplatonism. Fludd's hierarchical view of the universe and interest in Hermeticism suggests Ficino's influence. Another one would be Pico della Mirandola, a Christian Kabbalist, influenced Fludd's incorporation of Kabbalistic concepts like the Tree of Life. However, Pico's work is more narrowly focused than the broad medico-philosophical framework Fludd adopted from Paracelsus. Fludd also drew heavily from the Hermetic tradition, particularly the Corpus Hermeticum, which blended Neoplatonism, mysticism, and esoteric knowledge. This tradition reinforced his belief in a hidden divine order underlying the universe. Fludd is often associated with early Rosicrucian movement as well, and while it's debated whether he was a member, the Rosicrucian manifestos, like the Fama Fraternatus, shares his interest in esoteric wisdom, alchemy, and spiritual transformation. Through figures like Plotinus, Fludd adopted ideas about the emanation of the divine into the material world, which influenced his hierarchical view of existence. As a devout Christian, Fludd integrated biblical themes and Kabbalistic ideas into his work, seeing his philosophy as a way to glorify God's creation. Fludd's engagement with the Rosicrucian movement, which he defended in works like Tractatus Apologeticus, points to influence from its manifestos, possibly linked to figures like Johann Valentine Andre. However, the Rosicrucians themselves drew from earlier traditions, including Paracelsus, reinforcing his prominence. Fludd's Roman Catholic influence in alchemy has gone unnoticed by scholars until recently, particularly following Albrecht's examination of John Donne's Catholic alchemy, which introduces Roman Catholic elements in English alchemy. Albrecht analyzes Marian imagery in Donne's poetry, but offers a suggestive rather than definitive argument. There has been at least one visual reference identified to Marian Catholic doctrine in Fludd's work. In Utriski Cosmi Historia, a notable engraving depicts a naked woman amidst cosmic spheres, titled Integra Natura Speculum Artisque Imago. Fludd describes her as Natura, a virgin governing the sublunar world connected by a chain to the Imperium where the Tetragrammaton Yad-He Vav-He shines. The Virgin in Fludd's image represents the soul of the world, the Anima Mundi, who influences the stars and nourishes all things. The sun rests on her breast, with a crescent moon on her belly, and her loose hair resembles that of an unmarried girl. The 12-star halo, particularly one hidden behind her hair, along with the crescent moon, connects her to Mary as the Immaculate Conception. These attributes derive from Revelation 12's depiction of the apocalyptic woman. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a garland of 12 stars. Fludd draws an alchemical analogy to the unboiled child of the apocalyptic woman, referring to the mercurial spirit in the virgin's womb and noting that her heart gives light to the stars. The mercurial spirit, the spirit of the moon, is sent from her womb to the earth to create life, as Catholic dogma teaches that the second person of the Trinity, the Son, later Jesus, was the creator of the universe. Fludd's Virgin stands with her right foot on the earth and left foot in water, symbolizing the alchemical union of sulfur and mercury. The connection equates Fludd's Natura with the Catholic doctrine of Mary, a mediator between heaven and earth, embodying both human and divine after death. Fludd's Virgin, adapted to align with alchemical theories, reflects the medieval imagery of Eve, as Mary is considered the second Eve. In the Tractatus Theologico Philosophicus, he describes the virgin Psyche, daughter of nature, as a pure bride and a tabernacle of the Holy Spirit, mirroring attributes of the Virgin Mary. She is depicted adorned with divine light and as the minister of life, embodying the Holy Trinity. In Catholic doctrine, Mary is seen as the bride of the Trinity at her coronation in heaven. Now, for a quick moment, we will discuss the Fludd's concepts on nature. Fludd's nature concept includes two worlds, macrocosm and microcosm, with three regions each. He designed two opposing pyramids. The material one rises from cold, dark, dense space, while the former one descends from hot, light, sparse space. The middle region, where light equals darkness and form equals matter, is the sphere of equality. The sun's orbital sphere and divine seat from which stars derive their essence, akin to how numbers arise from unity. Fludd aimed to create a basic mathematical physics within his model of nature using mechanical analogies as proofs. He believed all motion starts beyond the heavens, illustrated by a wheel's easier rotation at its periphery than its center. His weatherglass apparatus showcased opposites interaction, functioning contrary to common thermometers and barometers. Fludd hoped his metaphysical ideas, like the two pyramids, would align with empirical findings. He envisioned a grand divine nature encompassing all knowledge, though he underestimated the public pushback his views would encounter. In Declaratio Brevis to James I, Fludd explained his intentions. The true philosophy, commonly thought as of new, would destroy the old. In the head, the sum, the foundation, and the embracer of all disciplines, science, and arts. It will diligently investigate heaven and earth, and will sufficiently, by its images, explore, examine, and depict man, who is unique. It is sufficiently obvious that my opinions are not new, but rather are the most evident explications and most clear demonstrations of the secrets of nature, which have been concealed or hidden by the ancient philosophers under the guise of allegorical riddles and enigmas. And now we will talk about music a little bit. When it came to music, Robert made significant contributions to the understanding of music as a cosmic and metaphysical force. He viewed music as a bridge between the earthly and the divine, reflecting the harmony of the universe. His works, such as the Temple of Music, explored the relationship between musical notes, ratios, and the Pythagorean scale, emphasizing their connection to universal order and human existence. Fludd's illustrations and writings often depicted music as a tool for understanding the cosmos, blending science, philosophy, and art. His ideas influenced the way music was perceived in the context of spirituality and the natural world during this time. Fludd's theories about music were deeply intertwined with his mystical and philosophical worldview. He believed that music was a reflection of the cosmic order and a means to understand the harmony of the universe. And here are some of his main ideas. The macrocosm and the microcosm. Fludd saw music as a bridge between the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the human soul. He believed that the harmony in music mirrored the divine harmony of the cosmos. He also had musical ratios and Pythagorean influence. He emphasized the importance of mathematical ratios in music, drawing from Pythagorean principles. These ratios, according to Fludd, were not just mathematical, but also spiritual, representing the underlying order of creation. In his work, The Temple of Music, Fludd explored the idea that music could be a tool for spiritual enlightenment and healing. He linked musical notes and scales to celestial movements and divine principles. With the music of the spheres, Fludd embraced the ancient idea of the music of the spheres, where celestial bodies like planets and stars were believed to produce harmonious sounds as they moved through the heavens. He saw music as a reflection of the divine cosmic harmony. Fludd incorporated alchemical and hermetic principles into his view of music. He believed that music held the power to transform and elevate the soul, much like alchemy sought to transform base metals into gold. Fludd also used symbolic representations to explain his theories. For instance, he depicted musical instruments as metaphors for the human body and soul, suggesting that playing music was akin to tuning's one inner being. Fludd's ideas were a blend of science, mysticism, and art, making him a unique figure in the history of music theory. The core components of Robert Fludd's theories about music reflect his unique fusion of mysticism, philosophy, and science. Music for Fludd was not only artistic, but also a tool for elevating the soul and connecting with the divine. He considered it a means of spiritual healing and self-discovery. Fludd's theories on music did stand out for their mystical and metaphysical approach, which contrasts with the more scientific or practical perspectives of other music theories of his time. And here are a few comparisons. Fludd versus Johannes Kepler. While Fludd emphasized the symbolic and natural aspects of music, Kepler focused on the mathematical and astronomical connections, particularly in his Harmonious Mundi, Harmony of the Worlds. Kepler's work was way more grounded in empirical observation, where Fludd's leaned heavily on mysticism and symbolism. Then we have Fludd versus Marian. Marian, often called the father of acoustics, approached music from a scientific and experimental perspective. He studied sound waves, resonance, and the physics of musical instruments. Fludd, on the other hand, viewed music as a reflection of divine harmony and cosmic order, prioritizing its metaphysical significance over its physical properties. Both Fludd and Pythagoras saw music as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. However, Pythagoras focused on the mathematical ratios in music and their universal implications, while Fludd expanded this idea into a broader mystical framework incorporating alchemy and hermetic philosophy. Fludd's unique blend of mysticism, symbolism, and music theory set him apart from his contemporaries, making his work a fascinating study in the intersection of art, science, and spirituality. In this part of the presentation, we'll get into some of the books he authored and specific views and research he is known for, and maybe isn't known for by most people. Fludd authored multi-volume encyclopedias covering topics like alchemy, astrology, Kabbalism, and divination, alongside theology, linking God with nature and humanity. He showcased practical knowledge in areas such as mechanics, architecture, military strategies, hydrology, music theory, mathematics, and medicine. His notoriety grew with Apologia in 1616, an early defense of the anonymous Rosicrucian manifestos, which remains debated regarding their origin and authorship. The Rosicrucians, whose existence has not been proven, were supported by notable Protestant reformers like Johann Valentine Alendrea. Other followers included practitioners of Hermes Trismegistus, along with ideas from Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus, all loosely labeled as Rosicrucians. Fludd's cosmology reworks Paracelsian alchemy. In his History of the Two Worlds, he illustrated the universe's origins, showing how God, like an alchemist, separated materials from chaos. His cosmos is structured by Paracelsus's three principles: light, darkness, and water, which generated three elements: prima materia, salt, from darkness; soul, sulfur, from light; and spirit, mercury, from water. These elements produced four qualities: heat, cold, dryness, and moistness. Fludd's medical writings include Anatomiae Amphitrite, Medicina Catholica, Philosophia Sacra, Clavis Philosophia, and Philosophia Moisaica. I even said those correctly. Now we will get into specific books he wrote and what he was talking about in them. And again, just a reminder, in the video version of this presentation, there will be pages of these books to see as I talk about them. Now, first one, I'm going to say what the name is translated to English. The metaphysical, physical, and technical history of the two worlds, namely the greater and the lesser. In this book, he explores the relationship between the microcosm, the greater world and the universe, and the microcosm, the lesser world and the human being. The text is divided into two main sections. The macrocosmic section, which addresses the structure and workings of the universe. The microcosmic section, which examines the human being as a reflection of the cosmic order. The macrocosmic section, the universe as a divine system. In that part of the book, Fludd presents his vision of the universe as a divinely ordered system. He describes the cosmos as an interconnected web of celestial bodies and natural phenomena, governed by a series of correspondences and harmonies. This worldview draws heavily on ancient and medieval sources, including Plato and Aristotle, for their philosophical frameworks, and the Hermetic corpus for its esoteric insights into the unity of all things. Central to Fludd's cosmology is the concept of the anima mundi, or world soul, which he views as the vital animating force that permeates and sustains the universe. According to Fludd, the cosmos is not a chaotic or mechanical entity, but a living, purposeful creation, unified by divine principles. This section emphasizes the interdependence of all creation with every element, from stars to earthly phenomena, and it reflects a grand, harmonious design. In the microcosmic section, the human as a cosmic mirror, this part shifts focus to the human being, whom Fludd sees as a microcosmic reflection of the macrocosm. Here he explores the body, soul, and spirit, drawing parallels between human anatomy and the larger cosmic order. Fludd delves into anatomy and physiology, describing the physical body. Psychologically, he examines the workings of the mind and soul. And Fludd's work is supported by several key ideas. Spiritual and moral purity. He asserts that true knowledge arises from aligning oneself with the divine order, emphasizing the importance of inner transformation over mere intellectual pursuit. Fludd critiques the emerging empirical approaches of his time, advocating instead for an integrated approach that blends science, philosophy, and spirituality. He uses a lot of visual metaphors. The engravings depicting the cosmos, human anatomy, alchemical processes, and mystical symbols are very important to his argument, serving as tools to unlock deeper meanings. Fludd's philosophy reflects his belief in interconnectedness of all things, challenging readers to see the boundaries between disciplines as artificial and limiting. Publishing during the 17th century, Utrecht Cosmi emerged in a period of intellectual transition as the scientific revolution began to favor empirical and mathematical methods over mystical traditions. Even then, Fludd still positioned himself as a defender of esoteric knowledge. And the next book that we will get into that translates over into English as Sacred and Truly Christian Philosophy, or Cosmic Meteorology. This book consists of 303 pages, preceded by an 8-page preliminary section, and includes a folded plate, an engraved title page, illustrations, and a portrait likely of Fludd himself. The book is dedicated to John Williams, the Bishop of Lincoln, a notable figure in the English church during Fludd's time. This dedication highlights the work's theological intent, suggesting that Fludd sought to align his philosophical explorations with Christian orthodoxy, presenting his ideas as a blend of faith and reason. Dedicated to John Williams, Bishop of Lincoln, the book underscores its Christian foundation, aiming to reconcile mystical philosophy with Orthodox faith. Fludd argues that understanding the cosmos deepens one's comprehension of God's will, offering a synthesis of reason and spirituality that challenges the thought of his era. Accompanied by detailed engravings, the text visually represents these ideas, using symbolism and imagery to illustrate the relationship between God, the universe, and humanity. And now we get to Anatomai Amphitheatrum, which translates roughly to the amphitheater of anatomy designed with triple imagery in various manners and conditions. This book is part of Fludd's broader philosophical project, linked to his History of the Two Worlds, which explores the microcosm and macrocosm. Anatomai Amphitheatrum primarily focuses on the microcosm, dissecting the human body through empirical and symbolic lenses. A significant portion of the book is devoted to Anatomai Mystica, where Fludd interprets the body through an esoteric framework. He views the human body as a microcosm, mirroring the macrocosm of the universe. As an example, he associates the heart with the sun and the brain with the moon, drawing parallels between bodily organs and celestial bodies. This reflects his Hermetic belief in the unity of all creation. In this book, you will see Fludd's medical philosophy, the concept of aryl nitrate, a vital substance he believed was extracted from the air and carried by the blood. Originating from the sun, this spirit was the source of life and health. In this book, he elaborates on how this vital spirit circulates through the body, offering a mystical precursor to the modern discovery of blood circulation, which Fludd connected to the work of his contemporary William Harvey. An interesting section called the Monochord of the World's Symphony explores the harmony of the cosmos. Fludd believed the universe was structured like a musical monochord with mathematical ratios governing both music and natural phenomena, a concept he applies to the body as well. This book also serves as a platform for Fludd to defend his ideas against critics, notably Johannes Kepler. Kepler had criticized Fludd's reliance on mysticism and allegory, advocating a more rigorous mathematical approach to understanding the cosmos. In this book, Fludd counters these critiques, arguing that true knowledge of nature requires both empirical observation and spiritual insight. This debate underscores the tension between mysticism and the emerging scientific revolution of the 17th century. Overall, this book is a beautiful illustrated exploration of human anatomy that goes beyond conventional medical texts of its time. Robert Fludd presents the body as a microcosm of the universe, integrating principles. His theories, such as circulation of the vital spirit, reflect a blend of early modern science and esoteric thought. This book stands as a bridge between medieval mysticism and scientific revolution, showcasing the intellectual thinking of the Renaissance. It remains as a testament to Fludd's ambition to unify the material and the metaphysical in his quest to understand the mysteries of existence. And now on to a book on music called De Musica Mundana from 1618. Robert Fludd's De Musica Mundana is a section within his larger work, The History of the Two Worlds, and is an illustrated exploration of the ancient concept of the music of the spheres. Fludd uses this book to present the universe as a harmonious system governed by musical principles, drawing heavily on Pythagorean and Platonic traditions. With engravings and metaphorical discourse, he connects the mathematical ratios of music to the structure of the cosmos and the human body, emphasizing the spiritual significance of this universal harmony. This book is a treatise exploring the macrocosm and the microcosm, specifically focusing on the music of the macrocosm, delving into how the universe operates as a harmonious entity. Fludd tries to demonstrate the interconnectedness of all things influenced by Hermetic and alchemical traditions prevalent during the Renaissance. In this book, Fludd also characterizes music into three distinct types: music mundana, cosmic music; musica humana, human music; and musica instrumentalis, instrumental music. In this book, Fludd also speaks on the Pythagorean idea that the planets and celestial bodies produce a form of music through their movements. He theorizes that distances between these bodies correspond to musical intervals, such as octaves, fifths, or thirds, creating a celestial symphony. This music is not audible to the human ears, but represents a metaphysical harmony that underlies the order of the cosmos. Fludd describes the universe as a great instrument played by God, with each celestial sphere contributing to the overall harmony. He also explores the idea of the monochord as a metaphor, a key element in Fludd's exposition in the monochord, a single stringed instrument historically used to demonstrate musical intervals. Fludd employs it as a metaphor for the universe, portraying the cosmos as a divinely tuned instrument. The celestial spheres align with specific notes or intervals along the cosmic monochord, reflecting the mathematical ratios that define both music and the structure of the universe. Fludd extends the concept of musical harmony to the human body, viewing it as a microcosmic reflection of the macrocosm. He suggests that just as the universe operates according to harmonic principles, so does the body, with its organs and systems corresponding to celestial bodies or musical tones. This idea ties into the medical background, implying that health and well-being depend on alignment with cosmic music, a balance disrupted by disease or disharmony. Unlike his contemporary Johannes Kepler, who analyzed the harmony of the spheres through the mathematical and astronomical lenses, Fludd emphasizes its spiritual and mystical significance. He argues that understanding the universe requires more than empirical observation. It demands an appreciation of its divine and symbolic nature. For Fludd, the music of the spheres is a manifestation of God's creative power, and contemplating this harmony offers a pathway to connect with the sacred. In De Musica Mundana, Robert Fludd presents the universe as a divinely orchestrated symphony, where the movements of the celestial bodies create a harmonious music rooted in mathematical precision. Using this monochord as a central metaphor, he illustrates how the cosmos is tuned by God, with each part contributing to universal harmony that extends to the human body as a microcosm. Through symbolic illustration and philosophical discourse, Fludd connects the structure of the cosmos to human experience, suggesting that the harmony reveals the divine order of creation. And finally, for the last book I will be discussing, we come to Integrum Morborum Mysterium from 1631. Robert Fludd's Integrum Morborum Mysterium is a significant work in the realm of medicine and the occult, forming part of his extensive series Medicina Catholica. This comprehensive text is divided into several sections, each delving into various aspects of medical knowledge and mystical philosophy. This book begins with an exploration of the nature of diseases, where Fludd discusses the origins and causes of illness. He integrates traditional medical knowledge with his own theories, emphasizing the influence of celestial bodies and alchemical principles on human health. In the diagnostic section, Fludd outlines various methods for identifying illness. He combines conventional techniques with his unique insights, proposing that the alignment of stars and planets could affect a person's health. This section is notable for its detailed illustrations, which depict the human body and its connection to the cosmos. The treatment section of the book is particularly intriguing, as Fludd offers a blend of traditional remedies and alchemical practices. He describes the preparation of various medical concoctions, drawing on his extensive knowledge of herbs, minerals, and other natural substances. Fludd's approach to treatment is holistic, considering not only the physical symptoms but also the spiritual and emotional well-being of the patient. Throughout this book, Fludd's unique approach to medicine is evident. He seamlessly blends scientific observation with mystical and philosophical insights, creating a work that is both informative and thought-provoking. The detailed illustrations and comprehensive coverage of topics make this book a valuable resource for those interested in the history of medicine and interplay between science and the occult. And now, before we get into my favorite part of the presentation, the eyes, the brain, and blood, we will quickly discuss some inventions he is known for. Fludd is often credited with one of the earliest attempts to describe a perpetual motion machine. His design involved a water wheel and an Archimedean screw, which was supposed to pump water back into its own supply tank, theoretically allowing it to run indefinitely. The water wheel would be turned by water flowing over it, generating mechanical energy. To screw this device would then pump the water back up to the top of the wheel, allowing it to flow over the wheel again. The idea was that the water would continuously cycle through the system, keeping the wheel in perpetual motion and generating endless energy. However, such machines are impossible according to the laws of thermodynamics. And then we have the thermoscope. Fludd also contributed to the development of the thermometer. In 1638, he published a design for the thermoscope, which included a scale, making it one of the earliest forms of a thermometer. Fludd's thermoscope was a simple device that could measure temperature changes. It consisted of a glass tube with a bulb at one end, partially filled with air and water. As the temperature increased, the air in the bulb expanded, causing the water level in the tube to rise. Conversely, when the temperature decreased, the air contracted and the water level fell. This device was significant because it laid the groundwork for the development of more accurate thermometers in the future. Fludd's work in this area was part of his broader interest in the natural world and the interplay between light, heat, and other natural forces. And now, on to the eyes. Robert Fludd's thoughts about the eye are deeply embedded in his cosmological and philosophical framework, which blends mysticism, alchemy, and Renaissance science. Fludd saw the eye as a profound symbol of perception, divine connection, and the interplay between the material and spiritual worlds. His ideas about the eye are scattered across his works, especially in the History of Two Worlds, where he explores the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm. Fludd was heavily influenced by the Paracelsian and Hermetic concept that the human body mirrors the greater cosmos. In this view, the eye held special significance as a window linking the soul to the external world. He believed the eye reflected the divine order, with its structure and function paralleling celestial phenomena. For Fludd, the eye's ability to perceive light connected it to the sun, which he saw as a symbol of God's illuminating presence in the universe. This idea aligns with his Neoplatonic learnings, where light represents divine emanation descending into the material realm. Fludd distinguished between physical sight and spiritual perception. The physical eye, he argued, captures the visible world, but true understanding comes from an inner eye of the mind or soul. This concept draws from mystical traditions, including Christian theology and Kabbalah, where the eye symbolizes wisdom and divine vision. In his diagrams, elaborate symbolic illustrations often depict the eye as a conduit for higher knowledge, suggesting that perception transcends mere sensory input to encompass spiritual truths. As a physician, Fludd also approached the eye from a practical standpoint, influenced by Paracelsian medicine. He viewed the eye's anatomy, its humors, lens, and retina, as evidence of divine craftsmanship. In his writings, he sometimes links the eye's fluid, like the vitreous and aqueous humors, to alchemical principles, such as the balance of elements, earth, air, fire, water, or the transformative power of light. This reflects his tendency to fuse scientific observation with metaphysical interpretation, seeing the eye as a microcosm of both bodily and cosmic harmony. Fludd's visual works provide further insight into his thoughts. In the History of the Two Worlds, he includes intricate engravings that often feature eyes with cosmological schemes. For example, an eye might appear at the apex of a pyramid or within a circle, symbolizing God's omnipresent gaze or the soul's perception of the divine. These images underscore his belief that the eye bridges the human and the infinite, serving as a point of unity between two realms. Fludd's idea about the eye were not developed in isolation. They are influenced by earlier thinkers like Marsilio Ficino, who linked sight to the soul's ascent toward the divine, and Paracelsus, who saw bodily organs as imbued with spiritual significance. Fludd's contemporary debates, such as his clash with Johannes Kepler over the nature of vision, highlight his preference for esoteric over empirical explanations. Where Kepler analyzed the eye mechanics, Fludd emphasized its metaphysical purpose. Kepler favored mathematical optics, while Fludd leaned toward mystical symbolism. In Fludd's thinking, the eye was far more than a biological tool. It was a symbol of cosmic unity, a gateway to spiritual insight, and a testament to divine design. He saw it as both a physical organ reflecting the universe's structure and mystical instrument through which humanity could apprehend higher truths. This dual perspective encapsulates his broader philosophy, a synthesis of science, mysticism, and theology, where every part of creation, including the eye, reveals the grandeur of the divine plan. Robert Fludd's eye diagrams are a fascinating aspect of his work, reflecting his unique blend of mysticism, science, and Renaissance artistry. While Fludd didn't focus solely on the eye in the way a modern anatomist might, his diagrams often incorporated the eye symbolically within his broader cosmological and philosophical illustrations. They appear primarily in his magnum opus, The History of the Two Worlds, published in parts between 1617 and 1621. Fludd's diagrams are not straightforward anatomical sketches like those of Andreas Vesalius or Leonardo da Vinci. Instead, they are elaborate symbolic engravings designed to emphasize metaphysical truths. Fludd used visual art to illustrate the unity of the macrocosm and the microcosm. The eye, as a key organ of perception, naturally found its place in these schemes, though it's rarely isolated. Fludd embedded it within larger cosmic or anthropomorphic frameworks. His works were produced during a time when scientific inquiry and esoteric traditions coexisted uneasily. Fludd's diagrams stand in contrast to the emerging empirical optics of contemporaries like Johannes Kepler, who in 1604 had described the eye's mechanics. Fludd, however, prioritized symbolic meaning over physical precision, a choice that shapes how the eye appears in his art. One of Fludd's most famous diagrams is a depiction of the universe as a series of concentric circles, often with an eye-like figure at the center or apex. In Volume 1, Tract 1, he presents the cosmos as a hierarchical structure emanating from God. The eye here symbolizes the divine, the all-seeing eye of God, overseeing creation. This isn't a human eye in the anatomical sense, but a stylized, radiant form, often surrounded by rays or clouds, linking perception to divine light. The engraving's intricate line work and symmetry reflects Fludd beliefs that the universe is a harmonious, divinely ordered system. In sections addressing the human body as a microcosm, Fludd maps correspondences between bodily organs and celestial forces. The eye often appears in diagrams of the head, paired with the sun or the element of fire, emphasizing its role as a receptor of light. These illustrations might show the eye within a human figure, connected by lines or annotations to planets or spiritual facilities like the intellect. For Fludd, the eye's ability to perceive light mirrored the sun's role in illuminating the cosmos, a direct nod to Paracelsus's macrocosm-microcosm analogy. Fludd's alchemical diagrams sometimes feature eyes as a symbol of transformation or enlightenment. In one engraving, an eye might gaze upon a scene of elemental interplay, representing the alchemist's insight into nature's hidden processes. These eyes are less about anatomy and more about the act of seeing as a metaphor for understanding divine mysteries. A recurring motif in Fludd's work is a pyramid or triangle with an eye at its peak, reminiscent of later Masonic imagery. This appears in diagrams illustrating the ascent from the material to the spiritual. The eye at the top signifies the pinnacle of perception, where the soul, through contemplation, apprehends God. The geometric precision of these figures reflects Fludd's fascination with mathematical harmony, even if he rejected Kepler's mathematical rigor in a favor of mystical interpretation. Fludd collaborated with skilled engravers, likely from the Bry family in Frankfurt, to produce his diagrams. These images are dense with detailed spirals, rays, Latin inscriptions, and allegorical figures, making them both intellectual puzzles and works of art. The eye, when depicted, is often stylized, radiant, or surrounded by clouds, rather than dissected like a medical drawing. Annotations in Latin might label it as oculus, eye, or tie it to terms like lumen, light, or visio, vision, reinforcing its symbolic usage. Fludd's eye diagrams are not about optics in the modern sense. Instead, they embody his philosophy. Perception as divine connection. The eye links humanity to the cosmos, channeling divine light into the soul. This aligns with Neoplatonic ideas of light as a medium of the divine, filtering through Fludd's Christian lens. Unity of knowledge. By placing the eye in cosmic and human contexts, Fludd suggests that sensory and spiritual vision are part of the same continuum, a rejection of the growing divide between science and mysticism in his time. Mystical insight. The eye often represents the inner eye of understanding, a concept rooted in Kabbalistic and Hermetic traditions where true sight transcends the physical. In comparison to Kepler, unlike Kepler, who diagrammed the eye's optics with lines showing light's path to the retina, or Descartes, who later mechanized vision, Fludd's diagrams are pre-scientific in their intent. They share more with medieval manuscripts or alchemical texts like those of Raman Lull, where symbols convey esoteric wisdom. Yet, Fludd's medical training, he practiced as a physician, hints at some awareness of anatomy. Now, when it comes to the brain, Robert Fludd's ideas about the brain went beyond its physical form, viewing it as a vital connection between the material world and the divine. Robert Fludd's thoughts on the brain brought together early scientific curiosity, mystical ideas, and philosophical speculation. He viewed the brain as a structured organ with regions dedicated to various mental faculties, a seat of the soul, and a pathway to the divine. While his ideas lacked the empirical foundation of modern neuroscience, they offer a window into the intellectual landscape of the early 17th century, blending science, mysticism, and the occult in a way that continues to intrigue historians and scholars today. Fludd's knowledge of the brain anatomy was limited by the standards of his time, relying on Vesalius's work and earlier theories, such as Albertus Magnus's idea of the brain's 3 ventricles as the abode of the soul. He likely accepted the ventricular theory common in his medieval and Renaissance medicine, which posited that different brain cavities handled functions like sensation, imagination, and memory. However, he expanded this with mystical interpretations, seeing these functions as a part of a cosmic harmony. For instance, he associated the brain with the element of air or fire, linking it to celestial influences like the sun, which he saw as a macrocosmic counterpart. This integration is evident in his broader philosophy, where the brain's operations mirror the universe's structure, aligning with this Hermetic principle of as above, so below. In his major work, The History of the Two Worlds, Fludd presented detailed diagrams that illustrated his theories, portraying the brain as a microcosmic reflection of the universe. One of his most famous illustrations, often called the spiritual brain, divides the brain into regions linked to specific functions. The 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing, rooted in sensory perception. And then there's higher faculties: imagination, reason, intellect, and memory, which he believed enabled deeper cognitive and spiritual processes. These divisions were influenced by the ventricular theory of the brain, an idea from earlier medical traditions like those of Galen. Fludd assigned mental functions to different ventricles: the front ventricle, sensory perception and imagination; the middle ventricle, rational thought and estimation; and the rear ventricle, memory. Fludd also saw the brain as a more than a biological organ. He proposed that through its faculties, reason, ratio, intellect, intellectus, and mind, mens, humans could access divine knowledge. His diagrams often featured a communication channel or beam linking the brain to the heavens, a symbolic representation of this spiritual connection. This structure echoed the Kabbalistic tree of life, showing Fludd's blend of Jewish mysticism and Christian theology. Fludd's theory included 3 interconnected worlds within the human mind, each tied to the brain's functions: mundus sensibilis, sensory world, governed by the physical planes; mundus imaginabilis, imaginal world, the realm of imagination and mental imagery. Mundus intellectualis, the intellectual world, the domain of higher contemplation and divine insight. This tripartite model highlighted his belief that the brain facilitated not just everyday perception and thought, but also spiritual enlightenment. Fludd's thoughts were also shaped by astrology. He suggested that the brain's structure mirrored the celestial spheres, with different regions corresponding to planets or zodiac signs. This idea aligned with his broader philosophy of the microcosm and macrocosm correspondence, a key Hermetic principle asserting that the body reflects the divine order of the universe. Now back to Fludd's spiritual brain diagram, featured in the History of the Two Worlds. This engraving depicts the head of a young man, symbolizing the human mind with various faculties labeled in Latin. The diagram includes the five senses: touch, tactus, index by the finger; taste, gustus at the mouth; smell, odoratus at the nose; sight, visus at the eye; and hearing, auditus at the ear. These represent the brain's role in processing sensory input from the external world. Higher faculties. Above the senses, Fludd places reason, ratio, intellect, intellectus, and mind, mens, suggesting a hierarchy of cognitive and spiritual functions. Ratio is associated with purposeful thinking, intellectus with contemplative beauty, and mens with overall consciousness. And then the communication channel. Above these faculties, a communication channel or vault connects the brain to the divine realm, allowing man to access God and the angels. This reflects Fludd's belief in the brain as a bridge between the material and spiritual. This diagram gives us Fludd's view that the brain is not merely anatomical, but a spiritual instrument, facilitating interaction with the divine through reason and contemplation. As a physician, Fludd likely applied his views in medical practice, though specific treatments related to the brain are less documented. His holistic approach suggests he saw brain-related disorders as imbalances not just in the body, but in the soul's connection to the cosmos, potentially influencing his use of alchemical remedies to restore harmony. And now, as we get closer to wrapping this up, we get to Robert's ideas about blood. Robert Fludd's thoughts about blood are intricately tied to his cosmological, medical, and mystical worldview, reflecting his synthesis of Renaissance science, Paracelsian alchemy, and Christian theology. As a physician and philosopher, Fludd did not approach blood solely as a biological substance, but as a vital, symbolic, and spiritual element within the human body, which he saw as a microcosm of the universe. His ideas about blood appear across his works, notably the History of the Two Worlds and Philosophia Mosaica, and are shaped by his influences, Paracelsus, Hermeticism, and biblical ideas. Fludd subscribed to a concept rooted in ancient and medieval physiology, further developed by Paracelsus: blood as the carrier of spiritus vitalis, vital spirit, a life-giving force linking the body to the soul and the divine. Drawing from Galenic tradition, he believed blood was produced in the liver and infused with this vital spirit in the heart, where it mingled with air from the lungs. However, Fludd went beyond Galen's humoral framework, integrating a mystical dimension. He saw the vital spirit in blood as a direct emanation of God's creative power, akin to the breath of life in Genesis. In the History of the Two Worlds, he describes blood as a vehicle of the soul, suggesting it animates the body much as the divine light animates the cosmos. Central to Fludd's philosophy was the Paracelsian idea that the human body mirrors the universe. Blood in this scheme held a special role as a microcosmic counterpart to celestial forces. He likened it to the rivers or currents of the cosmos, sometimes explicitly to the sun's life-giving rays or the ethereal waters of creation. In his diagrams, blood might be implicitly represented by flowing lines connecting the heart to other organs, symbolizing its role as a unifying circulatory force. For Fludd, just as the sun sustains the macrocosm, blood sustains the microcosm, carrying warmth, life, and divine essence throughout the body. As an alchemist, Fludd viewed blood through the lens of the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and their transformative potential. He associated blood with the element of fire due to its warmth and vitality, but also with water because of its fluidity, reflecting Paracelsus's emphasis on chemical and spiritual balances in the body. In Medicina Catholica, Fludd discusses blood as a chemical, CHYMICAL, substance, suggesting it undergoes a refining process within the body akin to alchemical distillation. This process, he argued, purifies the vital spirit, aligning the individual with divine harmony. Blood's red color further linked to the alchemical rubetto, or reddening stage, symbolizing completion and enlightenment. Fludd's Christian mysticism deeply influenced his thoughts on blood. He saw it as a sacred substance drawing parallels to the blood of Christ in the Eucharist, a symbol of redemption and divine sacrifice. In Philosophia Mosaica, he interprets biblical references to blood as evidence of its spiritual potency. For Fludd, blood was just not a physical fluid, but a medium through which God's presence manifests in humanity. This theological layer elevated blood beyond mere physiology, tying it to his broader goal of glorifying the divine order in nature. Fludd's career overlapped with a pivotal moment in medical history, William Harvey's discovery of blood circulation, published in De Motu Cordis in 1628. Fludd died in 1637, and while he lived late enough to encounter Harvey's ideas, his writings predate or only marginally engaged with his breakthrough. In Utriusque Cosmi, Fludd adheres to a pre-Harvey model where blood's motion is more mystical than mechanical, ebbing and flowing under the influences of vital spirits rather than a closed circulatory system. As a practicing physician, Fludd applied his theories pragmatically following Paracelsus. He believed blood's quality reflected the body's harmony with the cosmos. In disease, he saw imbalances in the vital spirit, perhaps an excess of heat or corruption of the blood's purity, as the root cause. His treatments detailed an integrum morborum mysterium, including Paracelsian remedies like chemical tinctures to restore blood's vitality, rather than the bloodletting common in Galenic medicine. He also linked blood to astrological influences, suggesting planetarily alignments could affect its flow or composition, a nod to his occult learnings. Fludd's thoughts about blood weave together several strands. Physiological, blood is the body's animating fluid infused with vital spirit via the heart. Cosmological, it mirrors the sun or cosmic rivers uniting the human microcosm with the divine macrocosm. Alchemical, blood is a dynamic, transformative substance reflecting elemental and spiritual forces. And theological, it embodies divine life, echoing Christ's sacrifice and biblical truths. Unlike modern hematology, Fludd's view was holistic and symbolic, less concerned with circulation than with blood's metaphysical essence. His ideas reflect a transitional moment bridging medieval vitalism with Renaissance mysticism, just as empirical science began to emerge. And now, as we really start to wrap this up, I figured a perfect way to end it, we will talk about Robert Fludd's ideas on death. Robert held a deeply philosophical view of death. Rather than seeing death as a mere end to physical life, Fludd regarded it as a transformative process integral to the soul's spiritual journey and its ultimate reunion with the divine. Within his work, he viewed death not as a termination, but as a transformation. He believed that death marked the soul's liberation from the physical body, allowing it to ascend to higher spiritual realms and return to its divine source. This perspective is vividly illustrated in his major work, The History of the Two Worlds, where he explores the interplay between the material and spiritual worlds. His diagrams depicting the soul's ascent through the celestial spheres reinforce the idea that death is a passage to a higher state of existence. Fludd's fascination with alchemy also shaped his thoughts on death. In alchemy, processes of dissolution and rebirth symbolize spiritual transformation. and Fludd likely saw parallels with the human experience. For Fludd, death was thus a gateway to divine knowledge and a step towards unity in the cosmos, aligning with his beliefs in the soul's continuous evolution. He accepted the immortality of the soul and the promise of resurrection and eternal life. However, his mystical leanings added depth to these beliefs, potentially blending them with ideas of the soul's progression through spiritual planes or its ultimate communion with God. This synthesis of Christian theology and occult philosophy suggests that Fludd saw death as both a physical event and a spiritual opportunity for divine connection. Fludd's view of the universe is cyclical, mirroring processes of creation and dissolution, extending to his understanding of death. He believed that just as the cosmos operates in cycles, the soul undergoes a similar journey of life, death, and rebirth. This perspective, rooted in Hermetic and Neoplatonic thought, framed death as a natural and necessary phase within the broader cosmic order, facilitating the soul's ongoing development and return to perfection. Fludd viewed death as a transformative and liberating process, essential to the soul's evolution and its reunion with the divine. Far from being an end, death for Fludd was a profound transition, a shedding of the material to embrace the eternal. And that will conclude this presentation. I hope you all enjoyed and got something out of it. Robert Fludd was a very influential player when it came to alchemy, medicine, and the occult. He has even inspired me when it has come to some stuff with alchemy and the occult. And because of that, I am very grateful I was able to put this together and share it with you all. And until the next one, everybody be well.